Today's stories contain topics that may be considered sensitive to some viewers, and as always, viewer discretion is advised. You can also send a story my way by going to astheravendreams.com, or check the links down below. And of course, thank you. I worked at a large chain retail store from the ages of 18 to 23, and like the good, loyal employee I was also blessed with working on Black Friday. Most of the time, my shift was earlier in the morning, when people were the craziest, but I also worked in the evenings as well. People were always crazy and evil, but the destruction and train wreck our store became that evening made me shudder just as hard, because it was always a process to clean and organize. We would find things crammed in the back of shelves, in boxes and crates months after that people were obviously trying to hide. I've got a few of those memories that I particularly remember during those years. One, of course, is always the violence. I never understood it either. Risking your own life or threatening someone else's is never worth any deal. Besides, ours was never anything special. Sometimes when there was a new game system or a new phone or something, we may get a good deal on it, but then otherwise you can get buy one, get one on matching family pajamas. Woohoo. Anyways, this one particular time was when those weird fingerling dolls became a big thing. They were those ugly-looking monkey toys that just sat on your fingers. I didn't understand why they got so popular, but they were going to be having a huge sale on them. Now, special offers like that one were always limited to one per person, so sometimes we may see two people together buying separately, which was fine. They just couldn't come back and do it again. If we recognized you, you're not getting another one. We closed Wednesday and opened up around 8 p.m. on Thanksgiving Day. I was helping one of the managers open up the pallets and tear off the plastic as the doors were being opened. We immediately started hearing a group of people laughing and wooing as they got closer to us. Knowing it was about to get stupid, we grabbed the plastic from the ground to prevent people falling and trying to press charges, and quickly dashed away. I went back up to my register and prepared to be bombarded soon. People usually took a while before they checked out, so we could just hear people going nuts in the aisles as we waited. Pretty soon, I started ringing people up. People were trying to haggle like it was a thing that we always did, complaining we were taking too long. The usual. Someone then tagged me out so I could go to break, and as I started walking to the back, I heard a crash and then someone scream, and then it sounded like fighting. Now, I didn't normally have a walkie, but they gave me one today in case people got a little too crazy, and I immediately called and said that there was probably a fight going on. It appeared to be over in the kids section, like toddlers area, and as I walked around the corner, all I saw was blood on the ground. It was like drops and smeared down the aisle. It looked like something straight out of a horror movie. I followed the trail to find a woman sitting by an end cap, holding her side with blood just running down it. I immediately pulled out my phone and called 911, and again called someone on the walkie to help. We sectioned off the area and grabbed what we could to help put pressure on her side. There was a decent gash across her shirt and side from what I could see. To add to this, two people had walked right over her feet and barely looked at her as I was turning the corner, and continued to pass by when I was there with her. They really didn't care that this person was bleeding out. When the paramedics and cops arrived, they got her all cleaned up and got her statement. We had to get one ourselves for liability purposes and stuff like that. She told us that she had grabbed a fingerling. Someone had followed her asking to trade colors, and she told them no, because it was her daughter's favorite color. And the person continued to follow and harass her, saying she was being selfish and inconsiderate. So the person rammed their card into her, and she told them that if she kept following her that she was going to report them. The woman left the aisle only to return, approaching her quickly, and before she could react, she felt a sharp pain in her side, and the woman snatched the toy and walked away. She was trying to walk to the front when she collapsed from the pain. We had people looking all over for the woman, but it wasn't until a female officer found her, trying to hide out in the restrooms, that they finally got her. All the while, she kept defending herself and basically saying that she felt it was the right thing to do. Well, now the woman ended up not getting the toy whatsoever and has a criminal record. I heard the lady that was stabbed, though, is doing okay. I also worked the customer service desk on occasions. People think they're really clever with trying to get money back on items they got on sale, and return them without receipts or return empty boxes, and are surprised when we actually look in them. Things like that. If they didn't have a receipt, there had to be an attached tag in order for us to prove that it was from us, and then you get whatever price it comes up for, and it's on store credit. We've had people try to return things with no tags, and just say, "Oh, it was $30, I promise," and then threaten us when the item rings up for a lot less, or not at all. I had one guy that tried to return a bunch of lingerie items and video games, all opened, of course, the weekend after Thanksgiving. That weekend, as well as the weekend following Christmas, is always hell for customer service, with people returning stuff left and right, and arguing about everything. So, I'm already not in the mood to deal with people. I went to the desk so that the one person there could go to lunch, and the lingerie guy came up. For obvious things like toys or appliances, we ask for the reason for the return so we know what to mark, and if it's something we could possibly resell. However, things like underwear we cannot resell, even if they look unused or unopened, so we don't have to ask the reason for the return. So, this guy came up looking smug as hell and tossed 2 bags up on the counter, saying he was returning it all. I opened the games and said I couldn't return most of them since they had been opened, and he responded with something like, "Hey, no problem, babe," and smiled at me. So, I stacked the 2 games that were unopened, and then opened the other bag to find all the lingerie. They all still had tags on them, though, but no hangers. I started ringing them up, and he said, "Do you need to know why I'm returning them?" I just asked him about the games, since I didn't need a reason for the other stuff, but he made sure to tell me that it was all too small for my girl, if you know what I mean, as he smiled and stared at my chest. So I just looked at him annoyed and said, "And the games?" And he replied that he already had them. Okay. So I started ringing everything up when he leaned in and says, "I should have just asked what size you were because you look close to my girls." All while still smiling and staring at my chest. So I quickly finished ringing it up and gave him his amount and asked how he wanted the money back. To which he again asked about returning the rest of the games. I told him that he couldn't return open games, and he said, and I kid you not, "How about store credit and you can keep the lingerie for yourself?" Trying to still be professional, I smile and say, "Let me ask the manager for you." So he stands up and waits while I call someone, but doesn't miss the chance to ask if my manager is cute. Shortly after, My manager Steven comes and asks him about returning the games, to which the guy quickly played dumb when he said that you can't return opened ones and then apologized, saying he wasn't aware and then stayed quiet as he finished the transaction for me and quickly left. I never saw him again, thankfully. This last one was on another Black Friday. There was a lady with her young kid. He was in the cart, fixated on some kind of game on a tablet. She was trying to buy 3 of an item that was 1 per person, and was trying to push it over my scanner quickly. This was towards the end of my time here, so I stopped putting up with people's BS like this, and I would shove it all back. I started kindly by asking her not to shove things over my scanner, and she complained, saying she was trying to help because I was going too slow. I looked up at her and told her that that was because she was rushing me, and I have to make sure everything gets scanned appropriately. I wasn't stupid, though. I knew that she was trying to do that before I noticed the multiple toys she got, but I saw it. So as I got to the items, I apologized and told her that she could only have 1, and that it was 1 per person. And then she went off. She claimed I was lying and that there was no reason she couldn't get more than 1. She then tried to say she was price matching a BOGO sale, and she got even more enraged when I told her that we never price matched. She tried everything. First, she said her kid wanted to buy one, and I told her I couldn't accept that since he was knowingly with her, and there was no way at his age he would be able to complete a transaction. She then tried to beg the customers behind her to buy it for her, and no one was agreeing to it. In fact, they all looked annoyed or scared of the woman. I finally told her to pick the one she wanted, and she finally gave in and chose one. I finished the order, and before leaving, she told me that you should watch your back, you don't know who you're messing with, and started walking off. Not at all fazed by stupid comments like this, I wished her a good night in my best sarcastic voice, and went about my shift until I had to leave. My boyfriend was picking me up after he got off work, which was going to be about another hour until then, so I thought I would walk around and check out what all we had on sale, and how destroyed the place looked. As I was walking by the electronics, I noticed a guy at the opposite end of the aisle looking at a movie. I didn't think anything of it at the time, and moved over to the next aisle. At that point, I was looking for a specific Blu-ray, so while looking, I noticed the guy had now moved over to the aisle that I moved to. Again, no big deal. I ended up leaving the electronics section and headed over towards household stuff. I was looking at the mugs and taking a picture of them because it reminded me of something my sister would say, and I sent her the picture. And that's when I noticed the guy from electronics had just walked past the aisle slowly, staring over at me. It was weird at first, but then I just told myself that I was in a store. You may run into the same person multiple times, and I let it go. Then I made my way to the toy section, and was looking at different puzzles. I noticed some items on the floor, and being the person I was, I started picking them up and putting them where they belonged. And that's when I noticed the same guy at the end of the aisle, but this time, he was definitely looking at me and talking on his phone. He didn't say much other than, yes, toys, yes, and things like that. Now, I was starting to get suspicious, so to test this, I started walking to the register and noticed that he was shortly following behind me. I then quickly turned out in front of someone walking down the aisle, causing them to almost run into me, and I apologized and we both continued on. I did this to cut through the women's clothing to see if this guy would still follow me, which he did. So, I continued straight to the back, and looked back to see him stop right there staring at me. I waited a few minutes in the back and then walked out the doors on the other side. I didn't see the guy anywhere, so I made my way to the exit so I could wait for my boyfriend, as he should be arriving shortly. As I started approaching, I saw the crazy lady I checked out earlier, without the kid though, talking to the guy that had been following me around, sitting over in the little cafe that we had in the store. I did not trust going out there at this point. The guy was big. Now, I'm barely 5 foot, and that guy had to be an easy 6 foot, and walked like he couldn't put his arms all the way down. So I walked to the back again and called my boyfriend to have him come into the store when he got there. When he finally showed up, he walked towards the back and I walked out, holding his arm to make sure he was close to me. As we walked out the doors, I saw them outside. She was sitting on the bench while he stood next to her, and she started pointing at me. We got in the car. I called my manager to let her know that they were pretty much stalking me, and it made me feel uncomfortable. We sat there and waited to see if someone approached them, which they finally did, and they apparently started arguing from what I could tell. I don't know what their intentions were, or if they were just trying to scare me, but again, this was all over a really stupid toy. And he could have easily just gone in and bought the item for her. Anyways, these were a few of the ones I remember while working there. Now, it was decent at times, but I am also so glad that I'm past that retail stage. My mother was your stereotypical shopper. She treated it like a hobby. Going with her friends, with her own mom, she would go to just about any sale that she saw at her favorite store. If she shopped there, she signed up for all the different rewards and clubs to get all the discounts that she could. She tried to get me to do it with her, but it was always so exhausting. Lucky me, I was the second and youngest child, so my brother never had to be dragged around. Just me. Sometimes it was fun, but being a kid, I got tired of it pretty quickly. One of my mom's favorites, of course, was Black Friday shopping. She loved being there first thing in the morning on Friday, and pretty much plotting out her day to go to the stores that she wanted to, even down to when my dad would meet up with her to bring lunch and take home the stuff she had gotten so far. Since I was still young, I always went with her while my brother got to stay home or do something with my dad. However, there was one year that made my mom reevaluate how she shops. This incident happened to me when I was quite younger, so this is what I remember, as well as the information my mom told me as I got older. One year, when I was about 6 or 7, I believe, my mom started preparing for her shopping plans. At that age, I was a pretty chill kid, and I kind of went with the flow. Being the second child, I guess, my parents eased up on the restrictions, contrary to how they were with my brother, and I think that was the reason that I was like that too. I wasn't particularly clingy to any one person, like one parent over the other, or a grandparent or anything. So, I was pretty easy to take care of, as it was explained to me, at least. So, we got all packed up in the van. I had a little backpack with my safety cup and snacks, and my mom had like this messenger bag purse that I swear could fit anything in it. We went to a couple local department stores in our area, and I remember it being super early because it was still dark out for the first few stores. Then we met up at the mall with my dad and had lunch, and he took our stuff home that was in the van. From here, We would end up going to several stores in the mall. I remember wanting to go to one of the toy stores there because they always had like little sample games or puzzles that you could play with. She said after she was done here that we could go to that store, so I decided to do what she wanted to quickly get through and then get to that store. We went to a few stores there. My mom had to grab one of those wagon things to carry all the bags she had, and I walked next to her since I could no longer hold her hand. We ended up going to some clothing store that was next to the carousel that they had in there, and I asked if I could ride on it while she shopped. To my surprise, she agreed. We walked up to the gate. She handed the guy the ticket and said I could ride it twice in case it took her longer. She pointed to the big window and said she could see me from right there, so if the ride was over, I could walk back over to her if there weren't a lot of people around for me to get lost in. Otherwise, she told me to sit on the bench right outside the ride. So, I waved her by and ran over to the seat that looked like a carriage for the horse in front of us and pulled out my snacks. I sat there eating my crackers while the ride went around, and I waved at the window each time so my mom could see me. Once the ride was over twice, I didn't want to go in that store and walk around, so I decided to sit on the bench and finish eating. While I was waiting, a man had walked up to me and kneeled down in front of me and asked me if I was lost. I told him I wasn't, and that my mom was in the store right across, and that I was just waiting for her. He then asked me things like, what does she look like, if my dad was with her, and then started asking me questions about me, like my name, how old I was, etc. He then offered to pay for me to ride the carousel again, and I agreed, but then my mom walked out of the shop talking on her phone and called me over. So I then told the man I couldn't and walked away, waving bye. He smiled and waved back. I tried telling my mom that he was offering another ride because I thought it was cool at the time, but she didn't really respond, and we just kind of continued on our way. We then ended up circling back to where we started, and I asked again if I could go to the toy store, and she obliged, but told me it would be only for 10 minutes or so. 10 minutes was a long time to me at the time, and I quickly ran into the store and over to the other side where you could actually play with stuff. I looked over for my mom when I got there, so I could show her the game that I wanted, but she was talking on her phone at the time, so I just went back to playing. After a few minutes, that guy that had offered me the carousel ride showed up next to me again and was asking me about the games that I wanted to play. He helped me with the puzzle that was there, and then he started asking me about what games I liked to play with. After telling him some of the video games I liked watching my brother play, and a few board games, he then mentioned hide and seek. I told him I didn't play it very often, because I had no one to really play it with, and then he said that he knew some other kids that were wanting to play, but they needed more kids to get the game going. He then also asked if I wanted to play, and that I could still have the carousel ride. I was actually pretty excited about this, as I wanted so badly to play with other kids. My brother was several years older than me, so he didn't often want to play anything with me. I told him I had to ask my mom first, and started walking over to where I had last seen her, and I noticed that she was no longer standing there. I tried to walk around to find her, when the guy stopped me and said that he had already talked to my mom, and actually used her name, saying she told me to go ahead while she finished her shopping. This was all the permission and verification I felt I needed at that age, and I decided to walk off with the man. We started walking towards the carousel, and we got closer, I started veering toward it when he pulled me back, saying we were going to play hide and seek first. I thought, fair enough. I knew there was a little playground area in here, and I assumed that was where we were going. We ended up going back to the food court, though, and he asked me if I wanted anything to eat or drink. I was really hungry, but as a child, being offered something like that, I wanted the little ice cream cups they had that were made in those little machines. He got me one, and I sat there eating it. I didn't know how to describe it at the time, but I started getting what I understand now to be these awkward vibes. I asked him where the other kids were going to be playing, and he just said something about taking me there. I continued to sit there and eat while he just looked at me and smiled. He made comments like I was cute in my jumper and bows, and even mentioned something about how my underwear must have matched since my bows did. I was a kid at the time, so all I knew to say in response was honesty, and I told him what color they were, and he just laughed and continued staring at me. After finishing, we started walking off. He was holding my hand as we walked, saying to make sure that he didn't lose me, and I noticed that we started walking towards the exit. I asked him again where the kids were, and he said it was at a park close by. And that was when I started feeling even worse. I asked him about riding the carousel, and he again said that we would do it after playing, but sounded more annoyed with me asking. I tried to slow down on walking and asked if we could ride it first, to which he quickly said no, we had to go first, and let go of my hand to start pushing me on my back out the door. As we walked up to the doors, I then told him that I didn't want to go after all, and he said something about going anyways, and then picked me up. At this point, I was getting scared and told him that I wanted my mom to go with us, and he yelled something at me about her not going, which made me cry. I started to struggle as we got closer to the van and he put me down, all the while still holding me by my jacket. I remember him struggling to unlock his van, and I slipped my arms out of my jacket and tried running back to the door. I could hear hurried walking behind me, so I tried to run as fast as my feet would go when I noticed someone walking out the door. As I approached the door, I was shouting for my mom, and when I got there, I turned and saw the guy walking back toward his van. The people walking out were asking if I was lost or if I was okay, and I didn't know what else to say or do but ask to get my mother. Those people took me up to one of the stores they called for mall security, basically, who had to page my mom. From my mom's side, she noticed that I wasn't over by the toys, and after looking around the store, she started panicking and asking people to page me into the store. When I didn't come to the front, she started to really freak out. They called for security and had people looking around for me. My mom thinks that the guy probably started seeing more security and that's why he tried rushing me out. I explained to my mom what had happened and that he knew her name, so I thought it was okay. After describing the guy to her, she said she recognized him from an earlier store after the carousel ride, where he made a comment about how well I listened, and he must have overheard her say her name at some point. Thankfully, she was able to give a better description of the man than what I could, except I had to try to describe the van that he had taken me to. Unfortunately, as far as my mom is aware, the guy was never caught, which is terrifying. With the comment about other kids, it does worry me if he was successful with other abductions. My mom was a lot more careful when we were out after that, too. My dad was never into big shopping like that, and I remember that this made him really mad at the time, but I think it really made them both smarter and safer, and made them more aware of their surroundings, thankfully. And to the creepy mall guy, I hope you never meet me or any other children ever again. I used to work at a certain electronics big box store that was primarily known for using the colors blue and yellow and selling things with a fairly decent markup. Decent for the store, not really the consumer. But honestly, that's most big box stores nowadays, isn't it? Jokes aside, it's probably best that I go ahead and tell you who I am and what I did. I was more or less a floor consultant. I had to walk around the floor, find customers, talk to them about what they were looking for, and try to talk them into buying literally anything. We didn't work off of commission or anything, but our job was to try and get as many people to buy various items with whatever replacement plan we could so that the store could have a better bottom line. Basically, floor salespeople that got paid slightly higher than minimum wage. On top of this, I was a 19-year-old girl that kind of fit into the stereotypical nerd girl persona. Freckles, glasses, pigtails, Animal Crossing pins all over my lanyard. And being a girl working in tech, even if it's just sales, is kind of tough. A lot of people look down on you like you don't know what you're talking about, even if you're absolutely on top of it. And when I say people, I mean both guys and gals. For some reason, we lasses just simply cannot know anything about what makes a good gaming rig, or what video game console is objectively better than the others. I don't understand this stereotype at all, but it is what it is. On top of being talked down to, you also get a lot of creeps that think that they have a shot with you, simply because you work in a tech store. I cannot tell you how many guys have hit on me with their quote-unquote A game, only for me to literally ignore it. I don't play for that team. Never have and never will. And even if I did, hitting on someone while they're telling you about a replacement plan for a printer, it's kind of trashy. Having been through this 1,000,001 times, I've become pretty quick to notice when a guy is going to shoot his shot, and I've gotten pretty good at quickly turning the conversation into something else before they can even get their chance. Sometimes you can tell by the look on their faces that they're going to try and say something to you, and that is where the story starts here. On this particular day, the one where this all happened, I was working near the front of the store, taking count of items in the audio aisle, mostly headphones, when I saw a guy walk into the store that's bald with a long dark beard, and something tattooed on his face. Now, I'm not one to judge tattoos. I'm all about self-expression, but I knew immediately what that tat was, and it was not something that I personally wanted to deal with. I'll just say that it had a very specific eagle design, and leave it at that. I was kind of shocked to see someone with that kind of ink on their face just walk into the store like that, and I must have been staring pretty hard for a moment because I accidentally made eye contact with him. As soon as that happened, he made that stupid grin, and I knew he was going to be the type to try to hit on me. I braced myself for impact as he walked towards me, and thought for sure he was going to say something. He motioned for my attention, and giving him the biggest smile that I could fake, I asked him how I could help him. I may not have wanted to talk to him, but it was my job, and I wasn't going to be disrespectful right from the get-go. To my surprise, he simply asked if our store had a public restroom. I told him we did, and I motioned toward the back and told him it was right behind the TV section in the corner. He thanked me and walked away. I honestly thought that was going to be the end of it. I finished doing my initial count of the headphones that we had on the shelf for my manager, took a quick snapshot on my phone as a reminder of the layout, and went back toward the back to see if I could find him. As soon as I get back there, I see none other than the bald guy with the eagle tattoo staring at the speakers we have on the shelf by the flat screens. Once again, I found myself staring at the tattoo, just thinking, wow. And once again, we made quick eye contact. He smiled as I tried to look away, but he quickly asked me if I could help him. At this point, I was kind of kicking my own butt for staring, but again, I figured I could kind of get out of this by telling him whatever he was going to ask about. I walked up and asked how I could help him in my ever so chipper tone. He started motioning toward a speaker system on the display part of the shelf and asking questions about it. I tell him that it's a decent system with a subwoofer and 2 satellite speakers. I mentioned that it was a good one for the price, then glanced over and noticed that the spot where it was supposed to be was empty. I then followed up my comment with, "But it doesn't look like we have any in stock right now." He glances over at me and then the speakers again, and asks if I could check the back. I tell him that we don't keep speaker stock in the back, and typically only have what's on the shelf. But he was adamant that I needed to look to see if there were any back there. I kind of sighed, but said I would happily go look, mostly because I wanted to get away from this guy and I knew that there wouldn't be any. I walked toward the back room, and as soon as I get past the swinging door, I realized that I heard steps behind me. I turned around to see this guy seriously standing in the entrance of the back area. I kind of just stared at him for a moment, and I sputtered out something about this area being for employees only, and he chuckles, saying he won't touch anything, and then starts walking toward me. Part of me wanted to tell him that he needed to leave, but I was kind of taken off guard when he cornered me by one of the shelves near the door. This whole situation was just creepy as hell. I had no idea what he was going to do, what he was planning, but he held that same creepy grin that he had when he walked in, and it was just kind of looming over me. And as creeps often do, he made it even weirder when I asked him to back up and give me some space. As soon as I did, he laughed and said that he noticed that I was staring at him when he walked in. He then asked me if I liked his tattoo, and if that's why I was staring. I told him no, and once again told him that he needed to not be back here as it was employees only. He completely ignored me and said, "I got this tattoo in prison. Want to know why I was in prison? I'll give you a hint. It involves my ex-girlfriend." At this point, I was seriously on the verge of a hardcore panic attack. This guy was very clearly getting his rocks off on making me scared. He kept his disgusting grin the whole time, and just kind of stood there with me cowering. He started saying things like, "You look a lot like her, actually. And I can show you what happened to her if you'd like. It won't take but a few minutes." Thankfully, at that point, one of the other employees came through the doors and started to walk toward the break area. That's when I mustered the courage to yell out for him. He looked up and saw this creep with his hand on the wall and looming over me, and immediately ran over to help. Thankfully, he really didn't have to do much, because when the guy started to walk over, this creep decided that he was done. He started to back away from me, but he kept his stare and told me that I needed to be careful. He then finished the whole event with, "Don't worry, I'll be back for you." And then he left. I seriously broke down into tears as soon as he was gone. My coworker, Paul, the one that pretty much just saved my life, helped me into the break room and got my manager there to help me file a report on the situation. Thankfully, we have cameras all over the back in order to stop theft, and they saw the whole thing happen. So it was pretty easy to get this guy's image. After that, I pretty much avoided going anywhere near the back when there was a customer near the doors. Thankfully, he never did return, but he 100% left a scar on me from this. I now get horrible anxiety when I'm alone with people in small areas, so basically agoraphobia. I didn't leave the job though, and I actually worked there until COVID hit, and then I couldn't do the job anymore for personal reasons. Now, I work remote for a decent corporate office, and I live with my girlfriend, and I pretty much never go out in public. So, thanks, bald, tattooed creeper, for making me hate being in public. And I really hope that you and I never meet again. So that was the collection of scary retail stories. Creepy retail stories, if you will. More about creeps than scares, I guess. Though they could kind of be the same thing. Also, I guess with retail stories, you're probably not going to have much in ways of cryptids or UFOs or anything. Mostly just creeps. Mostly just creeps. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button and leave me a comment letting me know your thoughts on which one was your favorite. You can also subscribe if you're new to the channel, and if you're not new to the channel, welcome back. I'm always happy to have a repeat customer. That all said, friends, I want to say a huge thank you to everyone who listened, and an even huger, that's right, huger thank you, to everyone who submits their stories to me or lets me use their stories from any of the sources I use. Thank you so very much. You guys are amazing. I love you all, and I hope you're having a great day. You can also support the channel further for as little as $1 a month on Patreon or channel memberships down below. I'll add your name to the list at the beginning of the month if you join now, so just saying. Even if you join now and only did it for 1 month, you would be on the list for a full month, all of December. Yeah, good stuff. And if you join the higher tiers and stay for a couple of months on the Patreon side, you can get posters. And I got some good posters, I promise. I need to get next year's done, actually. Thanks for reminding me. Anyways, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I hope I will see you on the next video. But until that time happens to be, quote-unquote, tomorrow, because there's a video tomorrow. Anyways, until then, friends, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. And of course, I hope that you sleep well.